Hey everybody, I'm coming to you today to answer an email from one of my students that I received. It's a pretty specific email, and rather than just reply directly to him, I wanted to put the answer out there because it's a pretty common question. Obviously this one is pretty specific, but we receive similar questions all the time. And so, like I said, I wanted to put the answer out there so everyone could benefit. So I'm going to read you the email, and I'm going to give you a long answer to try to unpackage everything and summarize it all, put it all together. So it says, "Hello, Tom. I have a practical and specific question. A liquor store close to my store was robbed at gunpoint recently. I have a blank machine and lots of blank equipment. If someone enters my store with a gun, can I draw my concealed firearm and shoot them? What are my options and the end results?" And we're going to call him Bob, even though that's not his name. We just want to keep it anonymous. He has a business, obviously, and one of his neighboring businesses recently got robbed. So he's concerned. He wants to know what he should do. So let's start out. Of course, I'm not a lawyer. I can't give you legal advice. You should consult with your attorney. And I'm going to word my answer in such a way as what I might do in this specific situation. I'm going to remind you of some of the generic rules of thumb that we covered in our concealed carry class, as well as I'll run you through what Illinois law says again. Before we get to all that, I did a podcast with Massad Ayoob. I think that that's a podcast that every single person who takes their self-defense seriously, not just armed self-defense, but unarmed self-defense as well. If you take your personal protection and your self-defense seriously, I really think everybody should listen to that podcast with Massad Ayoob. Also on my website, I wrote an article titled, "Can I Shoot If Blank?" Because when we play this what if game, scenarios can be pretty specific. I tie in a lot of what Massad Ayoob preaches, a lot of what is in that podcast that I did with him, as well as some other thoughts, and put my thoughts all together there. So those two things I really need you to look at and to read to put it all together. And then, like I said, we'll talk about what Illinois law says. But before we even get to that, you asked about what is the possible end result. You could be arrested, and that's the reality. You can feel totally 100% justified, and you can feel as if you did everything right, and you can still be arrested. And that's, the justice system that we have. It's not perfect, but it is what it is. You have to be prepared for that possible result. Is it guaranteed? No, it's not guaranteed that you'll be arrested. If someone breaks into your store, you may receive the benefit of the doubt, but there is absolutely going to be an investigation. We're talking about taking life, which is a serious matter. They're not going to just take your word for it. So there's going to be an investigation. You have to be prepared for the fact that even if you did everything right, you might still be arrested. The letter of the law simply becomes your lawyer's defense. You have to prove your innocence. It's an affirmative defense. And you do have to prove your innocence, that, yes, I shot this person, but what I did was justified. So Massad Ayoob teaches what he calls the ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. I like to call ability, opportunity, and intent. He says that to have a perfect affirmative defense, again, I shot this person, but I was justified in doing so. To have that perfect affirmative defense, you have to have the ability, the opportunity, and the intent. What is their ability? Well, in your email, you mentioned they came in with a gun, so they do have the ability. Is there an opportunity? In this case, right, you don't have any bulletproof glass to stop that. So if they came in and they had that gun in their hand, they certainly have an immediate opportunity. And immediate is important, right? It has to be an immediate opportunity. And then intent. Would a reasonable person, knowing what you knew at the time that you knew it, meaning they just broke into your shop or came in the shop with a gun in their hand, would they have come to the same conclusion that you came? That's what we call the reasonable person test. Their intent is going to be manifest through their words or their actions. And your lawyer is going to need to be able to articulate how and why you felt that they had the intent to do you harm. Obviously, again, if they're coming into your business, that's might be a fairly easy argument for your lawyer to make, with a gun pointed at you. So we've got that legal hurdle that we need to overcome: ability, opportunity, and intent. And according to your what if scenario, it seems to me that possibly a reasonable person might agree that they're there to rob your store. So then we have the question, should I shoot? A lot of people ask, like, you said, can I shoot them? It comes down to a question of could versus should. Could you? Probably justified, probably. But should you? Well, there's of course going to be an aftermath other than just legal aftermath, right? We could have potentially a mental or emotional aftermath. You could have some kind of social or societal aftermath because now you're the crazy guy who just shot someone. There could be a financial aftermath other than the legal system. Think about it like this. You just shot someone. So do you want to clean that blood and off the floor and the brains off the wall? Is it worth it to you? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Are you going to be able to deal with taking a life? That's something I tell all my students before you even apply for your concealed carry license. Make sure that you are capable of taking a life to save a life, because that's what we're talking about here. If you shoot someone, the chances are that they could die. It's not always certain, but it is definitely always possible. So can you deal with that aftermath? I believe I can, but I do know there is going to be an aftermath. It's likely that there's going to be some therapy involved. Do I want to deal with all of that? Is it worth it? That's what you have to ask yourself. Is it worth it? Are you going to lose customers over this, right? That's something you have to ask yourself as well. That societal or social aftermath, people may look at you differently after you've taken a life. So again, things that you just need to kind of weigh the pros and the cons. Now, obviously, all of this in a split second, you're not going to be able to make that decision. So the question I pose to you is, do you feel your life was in immediate danger? And if you can articulate that ability, that opportunity, and that intent, you have that perfect affirmative defense that should you get charged, your lawyer can argue on your behalf. So my rule of thumb, generally speaking, it's not a hard, firm rule of thumb, but shoot to defend life, not stuff. Stuff can be replaced. Nothing that you mentioned, in my opinion, the various equipment and stuff that you mentioned cannot be replaced. So you have insurance for that. And yeah, egos get involved when we have these conversations. I worked my ass off for this. Someone's trying to take it. That's not right. And you're right. It isn't right. But is it worth it? That's only a question that you can answer. The analogy I like to make is, if I'm at my house, and we're talking about your business, which is similar but different. If I'm at my house and someone breaks in and I happen to catch them walking out my door with my television, am I going to shoot them? And the answer is absolutely not. I don't want that aftermath. I don't want to have to clean the floor. I don't want to have to, if I take their life, deal with potential emotional aftermath. I don't want to deal with a social or societal aftermath because now I'm the crazy guy who shot someone and my kids' best friend's parents won't let them play together. So those are things I don't want to deal with. Having said that, if they come back in and they have a gun or a weapon of any kind, or I believe that they're there to cause me harm, that changes the entire scenario. If someone's trying to throw a Molotov cocktail at my house, that certainly raises the bar way beyond what a television is. And so that whole shoot to defend life, not stuff, again, it's a good rule of thumb, but it's not a hard, fast, 100% always rule. You've got to ask yourself, is it worth it? So that's really my opinion about it, right? That's my opinion. It really doesn't mean anything to you. You have to come up with your own opinion. And that's what I was trying to do, is to give you the information kind of so you can weigh the pros and the cons in your own head and come up with your own answer. Is it worth it to you? That's what you have to decide. I can't tell you that. The potential aftermath, as I said, maybe you get charged, maybe you don't. If you do shoot someone, there's going to be blood and guts that potentially need to be cleaned up. So just be prepared for all of that. Having said that, I want to remind you about what Illinois law says. So I opened up our presentation from our Illinois concealed carry class, and I'm just going to read it to you verbatim. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm literally just going to read the law to you verbatim. So let's take a look at that. So Illinois has use of force in defense of person, use of force in defense of dwelling, and use of force in defense of other property. We'd be looking at, in your specific scenario, use of force in defense of person or other property, because dwelling is your home. So if we talk about use of force in defense of person, a person is justified in the use of force against another when and to the extent that he reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend himself or another against such other's imminent use of unlawful force. What we're talking about here is what I refer to as simple force, essentially a push or a shove, slapping, or something like that. We're not talking about shooting someone because they punched you. That talks about our next sentence. However, he is justified in the use of force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm, only if he reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or the commission of a forcible felony. And we'll talk about what a forcible felony is, but unpackaging it, it says, again, use of force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm, only if he reasonably believes, and that goes back to that reasonable person test. Would a reasonable person come to the same decision that you came to, knowing what you knew at the time that you knew it? And whenever you see reasonable person or reasonable written into law, the way I like to think about it is, would a judge or a jury agree with me? Because that's the reasonable person that they're really referring to. So you can use lethal force to stop lethal force, is basically what this says, or prevent the commission of a forcible felony, which I'll define in just a moment. We also have use of force in defense of dwelling. That's your house. It really kind of doesn't apply here because we're talking about your commercial property. So that leaves us to use of force in defense of other property. And what that says is a person is justified in the use of force against another when and to the extent he reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to prevent or terminate such others' trespass on or other torturous or criminal interference with either real property other than a dwelling or personal property lawfully in your possession or in the possession of another who is a member of your immediate family or household, or of a person whose property he has a legal duty to protect. So in my opinion, what it's saying, and again, my opinion doesn't mean much because I'm not a lawyer, you can use force to stop someone from, let's say, trying to steal from you, right? But at the same point in time, it has to be legally in your possession. That's obviously very important. It's your store, it's legally in your possession. So again, you can use that simple force, that push, that kick, that shove to stop someone from stealing from you. However, you're only justified the use of force which is intended to likely cause death or great bodily harm only if you reasonably believe that such force is necessary to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. So again, there's that word. Forcible felony means, this is according to Illinois law, this is the legal definition, treason. Obviously, we can't go down to Springfield and start shooting politicians because we disagree with them, so let's just forget that. We're talking about murder, we're talking about sexual assault, we are talking about robbery and burglary, which certainly could fit within your scenario. We're talking about arson, kidnapping, battery resulting in great bodily harm, or we're talking about any other felony which involves the use or threat of physical force or violence against another individual. So back to your scenario, it's could you legally? Yeah, maybe you could legally get away with it. And I don't mean get away with it as if you're doing something wrong. I mean get away with it as maybe no charges would be filed. Maybe they would. When it comes down to it, is it worth it to you? Only you can answer that. Keep in mind this. If they do decide to file charges, you're probably looking at a $5,000 bail and you're probably looking at a $5,000 retainer. Is what they're taking worth $10,000 to you? It's only a question that you can answer. So I want you to check out that podcast. I want you to read that article. If you have follow-up questions, definitely contact me. But also contact your lawyer as well, your self-defense attorney. If you don't have one, I recommend everyone get a self-defense attorney. Put them on speed dial. Build a relationship with this person. I think that's really important to do in the convenience of your free time. Make sure that you trust this person. Build a relationship with them. And then you can forward these types of questions to them. I don't mind answering these types of questions. I'm just very limited in the answers that I can give to you because I'm not a lawyer. So again, reminding you nothing I said was legal advice. Bounce everything I said and verify it all with your attorney. I think that's important. As always, everybody, be armed, be trained, and be alpha.